Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another edition of the OpenShift Container Storage Office Hours. Today, we are going to break things on purpose. I'm joined by Michelle DiPalma and Eric Nelson. Michelle, how you doing? It's been a little bit.
It has, and I have to tell you, breaking things on purpose is like my favorite thing. So
Yes.
this is going to be a good show. It's going to be fun. So, okay, so we're still on our migration train,
Mhm.
and if everyone remembers, last time we talked about just migrating from OCS 3.x to 4.x in general, but now we actually want to get into the problems you might encounter. So Eric Nelson is back, and I'm going to ask Eric to just give a slight level set overview of where we are, so that we can kind of pick up where we left off last time.
Sure. Hi, thanks for having me back.
Hey, thank you.
Right now we're looking at the OpenShift 4 console. So MTC is a tool that helps you migrate your app workloads from, typically we see an OpenShift 3 to an OpenShift 4 cluster, although that's not actually necessary. So it'll do 4 to 4 workloads as well. And actually we've had people even go to 3 from 4. So it's agnostic as far as which direction you're going.
Hmm.
The we're looking at the OpenShift 4 side. So this is the target. This is where the majority of your, we call this like the control clusters. So typically you have one controller. The API surface is a set of CRDs. And then you'll create CRDs and the controller will orchestrate things across clusters in order to make your migration happen from a source to a target cluster. It has its own UI. So Michelle,
There it is.
there it is. So on a high level, when you're thinking about a migration, you've got two clusters, of course. So you're going from a source to a target cluster. You need an intermediary replication repository, and that's going to hold. It depends on exactly what type of migration you're doing. We actually support indirect and direct migrations, so you can upload some objects into storage in between your clusters, and then it'll end up in a target, or you can go actually directly into the target. There are reasons why you might want to or not want to do that, depending on your network topology and that sort of stuff. But that's always required, even if you're doing direct, because your Kubernetes resources, so the objects themselves are serialized and deserialized out of the replication repository. Direct will do your volume data directly. So that's kind of the important thing. It's going to be your your most heavy thing, bucket of stuff. So that's the second piece that you need. And then you're good to go to describe a migration plan. So you plan out your migration ahead of time to be executed at a time of your choosing in the future. So today, what we're going to show is we have a series of break fix exercises. So these are some exercises that deliberately break things, and then we're going to look at repairing that. So you'll get a chance to see kind of what do things look like when they go sideways. And so for the first one, we are going to misconfigure our clusters and replication repository, and we should see that, let us know, and then we can repair it.
Okay, so I've already cloned, just so everyone can see, we have the OpenShift TV demo repository with our broken stuff, and I've already cloned it. So talk me through the setup. At this point, MTC is set up, but we've only got the OCP4 configured.
Yes. So
okay.
We're looking at, this is what you would see if you had just installed MTC into your OpenShift 4 cluster. So no other clusters have been registered. So we have an OpenShift 3 cluster with some workloads on it, but it hasn't been registered yet. So when you come into MTC, the first thing that you want to do is actually register your source cluster. And separately, you want to set up your replication repository.
Okay.
So we're going to go through actually doing that in a corrupt way. So Michelle, if you want to hit the add cluster button, we'll see exactly what information it actually is going to ask you.
Okay.
So on the exercise, if you recall, I said that the API for MTC, it's all CRDs. So you can basically do everything from the CLI, and more specifically, like from the Kubernetes API. So you can use kube control to create your objects or whatever. So we actually have some YAML files that will automate the creation of this. So what you're doing when you fill out this form right here is actually creating a MIG cluster CRD to register your other cluster. A MIG cluster CR instance. And so we're going to put some bad values in that and see the controller actually reconcile it and determine that that's actually bad.
Okay, so do you want me to do that now? Like just put garbage in here? Or
if you go onto the CLI,
okay. Let's get out of this for a second. Hang on. All right, first one, misconfiguration.
Yep.
Okay. This is
So there's a 0, 1
Yeah.
0, 1 misconfigure, and if you want to click on that, maybe we can take a look at what's actually in there. The instructions just tell you to create it, but it's probably useful to take a look.
Yeah.
So you can see that, let's see, there's a series of resources here. So there's a MIG cluster object. And so a MIG cluster object, in order to like actually register another cluster, you need two things really. You need the coordinates to the cluster, which takes the form of the API server's URL. And then secondly, you're going to need a service account token. And when you install MTC, it's sort of like it requires an agent on each of your clusters. It's actually an operator that deploys its operands. And when we call it sort of a control cluster and a remote cluster variant. The remote cluster is a subset of the things that the control cluster gets. Specifically, it's Valero, really, because we require Valero in order to like pull our stuff out of that cluster. And in addition to that, the operator will create a service account and permission it with all the permissions that we actually require in order to do this on the source cluster. So that service account token is what we use for the credentials in order to get it. Separately, you're going to see there's some AWS access keys, secret keys. That's a bunch of junk in this file. So that's actually what we're going to want to go in and repair. So if you wanted to, you could like automate all of this by creating a file like this and then filling it out with all of your good details. And the UI itself actually is just talking to the Kubernetes API and filling out these objects as well. So this is, we're going to create a bad MIG cluster and we're going to create a bad replication repository, and we're going to see how the controller reconciles that.
Okay.
Hey.
All right, so hang on, let me just go back to the README so people have something nice to look at. We're going to apply this. I'm already logged in, just for everybody. I'm logged into my 3.x cluster.
Yep, the source.
All right.
Roro.
Uh-oh, hang on. OpenShift. I don't know how
we're breaking things early. So okay. So we actually ran that on the wrong cluster. I think I was mistaken by telling you to run that on the OpenShift 3 cluster.
Now this is awesome. All right,
yeah.
folks, you are really gonna get it now. All right.
Okay. All right. So we want. Hang on.
So what did it create? It created the S3 repository.
Let me go get.
It created the MIG cluster and the MIG storage on the OpenShift 3 cluster.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that's not going to do anything is because there's no controller in the remote cluster that's actually reconciling those in order to make anything. Nothing's watching them, right? That's like a core concept in Kubernetes is you've got your watchers of these objects.
Okay.
It's also telling you that it can't find OpenShift config because the way that the data model is structured, a MIG cluster references a secret with your sensitive credentials, and on OpenShift 3 there is no OpenShift config. So I knew right away seeing this that that we were doing it on the wrong cluster, because I know that OpenShift config isn't a namespace that's there by default on OpenShift 3.
Nice.
So
okay. Good to know.
So you Michelle, want me to log into the 4.x cluster?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. Hang on. If that's okay.
No worries.
I go dig it up. Hang on a second.
Happy dance here for
talk amongst yourselves. Well, there we go.
So,
Eric, can you send those to me?
Yep.
Thanks.
Let me grab the command for you.
So while everybody's watching, don't forget Red Hat Summit is a big event this year, and you should go because, well, it's free. And if that's not a good enough reason, well, it's still free, and I hope that works. So if I just dropped a link in chat there, if you want to hit that, provide whatever info they ask you, and away you'll go to Red Hat Summit. It's broken up into 3 parts this year. First part's going to be more keynote focused. The second part's going to be a little more, technical. And then the third part, we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we could come to a place near you and have some hands-on workshop kind of thing. So sign up and get in the loop on all that info. Even if you don't want to go to the first part or the second part, you still probably want to know about the third part. So go ahead and sign up for all that info.
Almost
All right,
there.
Michelle, you ready? You think so?
I'm
No?
just logging into the cluster here.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I got the command for you, Michelle. I'm going to send that to
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
So if you're not familiar with operators, folks, have to work away from home. Oh, that's so, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Tony. But if you've not heard of operators and what they do, we have a wonderful book on operators you can get for free. Just head over to the operators ebook link I dropped. But operators are incredibly powerful because you're actually, there's a GIF of a person jumping into a box and the box closing kind of thing. That's essentially what you're doing. You're putting this operational knowledge that someone has in their head and putting it into code, for lack of a better term, right? But you can write these with Helm charts or Ansible or Go, or there's now a billion ways to write a good operator these days, it feels like. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and creating some operators to start automating your workloads or even automating deploying of your entire application stack, because operators can do that. They live on a premise of a reconciliation loop. So they're always looking at a certain group version kind and waiting for events to happen, and they run once something is triggered in the event log. So it is an incredibly powerful way to kind of do things that would normally be kind of either step by step, or B, something that you would just want to do on a regular basis and, get this piece of work out of my way and let me get onto other more challenging things like blowing up clusters.
Okay, we're good. So again, I'm applying this to the 4 cluster. Hang on, ta-da, where the watcher is to reconcile this. Okay.
There we go.
All right. So do you want me to go check to see that this, it says it's created a repository. Let's go see. Okay.
Hey, look at that.
So we created these CRs with some known bad values in it, right? And so the controller, as Chris was describing, is reconciling these objects to make their desired state and as part of that, it runs through a validation. And it does that for both a cluster and a replication repository. So for an S3 bucket, it actually creates a dummy piece of data in the bucket in order to verify that it can actually talk to the bucket. And then for the cluster, I believe it makes some API requests in order to actually confirm that it's possible. So if we there's a kebab menu to the right of that connection failed. If you hit edit, we'll see the values. So we've got the name, and you can see misconfigured url.com. Hopefully does not refer to a Kubernetes cluster. And then we've got a bad secret service account token. So
okay, it gives you the reason down here.
Yes. And so if we were to actually pull up, we don't have to do this, but if you were to pull up the MIG cluster CR, that's going to have a status section, which is typically the spec section is the user's intent of a CR, while the status section is the current status of that CR as the controller views it as it's reconciling. So that's the typical Kubernetes pattern, and that's where you're going to find this type of information. So you'll find conditions that are associated with that CR that describe whether what's going on with it. And in this case, you'd see a failed condition that says, "Hey, your connection is bad."
Right.
So
let's run it again. It's going to fail.
If you're looking for a domain, misconfigured URL does appear to be available.
Okay, so how do we fix it? Can we fix it from here? Do you prefer, what do you want to, should we go look at replication repositories and the error there as well? Or
yeah, let's take a look there as well. Either I can shoot you the service account token, Michelle, or I can actually repair it on my side, just sort of I'll fix it, and actually you should see it on your side because it's live, so it's polling.
Okay.
Oh, fun.
So should we fix the cluster? I can go in and try to fix that.
Yeah, go ahead and fix it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Eric is the man behind the curtain fixing the cluster.
Yeah, so I'm getting the API location. So I'm gonna pop open edit and drop in the
I'll refresh at some point.
the
Okay.
URL. You
Okay.
actually can, yeah, you should see it live. So if you close the modal, like it's actually polling.
Okay, cool.
So I'm updating the cluster with my credentials right now,
And there it
and it's
is.
validating.
Okay. And we're connected. Nice. Yay. Okay. So that's the actual, cool. You fixed it. Yay.
Hey, look at that.
That's our first break fix. And so it's validating it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that will just continue to happen. So like if we were to go in and break it again, it would end up not connected. And actually, like most of the data model and the controller is watching for ready conditions. So that's how it knows when it's trying to do work. Like it won't allow you to go and do or it won't actually initiate a migration unless everything is ready. So I can go in and I'll do the same thing for this one if you want to take a look at that. I'm going to do it from my side as well because we do have some sensitive credentials here.
Yeah, don't share anything you don't want the internet to see, please. It just makes my job hard.
We're watching a pot boil here.
Hey, you know, paint drying. Somebody said something in chat. Like
Yeah,
to
are there
say,
any questions so far?
No, not yet. Just people appreciating the break fix idea and walking through the troubleshooting, right? Like it's like I always say before, you know, that anybody goes on for the first time on the channel, right? People appreciate when things fail because they get to learn how we troubleshoot things.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So we wholly embrace failure.
Okay, let's see. I thought it was interesting that Eric mentioned that it doesn't have to be OCS 3 or in OpenShift 3 to 4. It can be migrations between clusters of different versions that are all on 4. That could definitely open up possibilities for someone. Like I tend to think of it as just coming from OCS 3.x, but that's not true. You can do all kinds of stuff. So that's cool.
Michelle, so I'm actually having a problem registering this. So I think this is, well, this is off the rails a little bit.
Okay.
And I think we can repair it. So
Already like
Okay.
we should walk through that. If you open up the kebab menu,
Okay.
hit edit. Okay. So if you were to, let's see, I updated the name and credentials. Right now, though, it considers it to be a self-hosted S3 rather than an AWS S3. So up top, if you see the storage provider type.
You want me to change it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So try to update that. Just hit the update button. I think the values that I've provided are good. And if you scroll down that modal, we may see an error here. Okay. So let's see. The backup storage config settings. Okay. So you can see that it's still trying to connect to misconfigured endpoint. Of course, there's no bucket that lives there, right?
Right.
So
not yet, but I'm sure someone could get one running by the end of the show.
Yeah. So there are a couple options that you could do here. If you open up, let's see if we can take a look at the actual object on the CLI.
Okay. So what am I editing?
Do an OC edit. Let me give you the specific command.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is actually pull that bad endpoint off of the object. So let me make sure double check the command.
Okay.
Do you have the OpenShift migration namespace active? That's going to be the namespace where you're going to find all of our MIG API objects.
Hang on. What did you say it was? OpenShift names? No, migration. Sorry, I'm usually in a different namespace. OpenShift migration, did you say?
Yeah, do a, does that set, I think you want to make it active by doing OC project OpenShift
Mhm.
migration.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay.
Okay. So if you do OC edit,
Mm-hmm.
MIG storage, MIG storage,
One word.
that is the name of the CRD. That's the short name of the CRD.
Cool.
And then space S3 dash repository.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. What am I
Okay.
looking for?
So this is the CR that represents the repository. So let's see if we can find that misconfigured
I see
URL.
it.
Oh, there it is. I
AWS
see it.
URL. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, wait,
go ahead and actually delete that key if that's possible.
Okay.
So okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. I was just
Okay.
going to talk through some of the other fields, but it's possible that that may have.
Did your VI crash?
Wasn't it?
That's impossible. VI doesn't crash.
I swear I just
All right.
like
You went completely deleted.
deleted.
Yep.
There
Okay.
you
Do you
go.
want to talk about the other fields first, or?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, there's nothing like super interesting here, but you can see that we use the bucket name. Like really, it's similar. It's like we need the coordinates to the bucket, and we need the credentials. So the way that you're going to file your credentials is we're not just putting them into plain text. They're sitting in a secret here, so you can see that it actually refers to a secret. And to fully qualify that, we need to provide it the name and the namespace.
Okay.
So.
All right, let me try
Fingers
this.
crossed that secret has the correct values. And we should see you saved it?
I did.
Okay.
It's thinking. Hang on. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yay.
You
So
wanna
I
look
think
at
it
again?
actually just came ready.
Did it?
Yeah.
Bingo. Nice.
Connected. Just like that.
Oh.
So we
Good
have
job, whoever
repaired.
set up that bucket so fast. Kidding.
We have repaired the cluster and the intermediary repository. So
Okay.
that is the first break fix exercise. And we hit some
Ta-da, that's
speed
it.
bumps, but we made our way through them.
No, it's good. Okay. So do you want to move on to 2? Does anyone have questions?
No questions.
Okay.
So
But
that's
feel
kind of
free
an
to
example
ask
of like
folks, right?
generically, like when things go wrong, the controller should be reconciling and giving you meaningful error messages. Like in the case of the replication repository, that actually wasn't planned, but based on the error that was reported by the controller, it was clear that misconfigured was wrong. So naturally, the first thing that I went to do was to go check the CR because that's gonna be where the error is, and of course, misconfigured is the wrong value. So.
Okay. That makes total sense. Okay. So are we moving on to 2?
Sure, unless there's
Okay.
any questions, doesn't sound like it.
All right. Podge. Okay.
So I can give a little brief on this one as well.
Yeah.
So the way that these break fix exercises were written for a version of MTC, actually, let me even give a little background on this part. So when MTC transfers your data, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. One of the ways that it uses is a file system copy. So you can kind of think of that as an rsync. At one point in time, we really only had one mechanism in order to do that, and that was called Restic. Restic is a tool that's bundled with Valero. And so Valero is a backup and restore tool, and it's Kubernetes native, and you would create your backup and restore CRs, and it would pull your Kubernetes objects and your data and drop it into an intermediary repository. And that's actually why we require one, because we're built on top of Valero. And so Valero will pull your data and drop it into the replication repository for restore at another point in time in the future, because it's a backup and restore tool for DR. For our case, we were, for a long time, MTC, really the way that it worked was that it would orchestrate backups and restores between a source and a target. So it sort of abstracted the implementation details of a migration, which was a few different, like a dance of backups and restores. Of course, that's not ideal because it means that you would need to update, let's say you had a terabyte of data in a volume, you'd need to put a terabyte of data up into an S3 bucket, and then you'd need to pull it back down, which means you're transferring 2 terabytes of data. So twice the amount of data that you actually have. It's going to take longer, etc. So with a recent version, we've actually moved to, or we support a direct migration, which is quite literally an rsync over an, like there's sort of a, I can go into the technical details if people are interested, but it'll rsync data over a route to your target cluster. So it goes directly, which means in theory, it should go twice as fast because you're moving twice, like 1/2 of the data that you needed to with the former indirect mechanism. As part of the indirect mechanism, we do something called, we require stage pods. And in fact, direct also requires a similar mechanism. So in order to actually access the data, we need to bring up a pod so we can start to run things like rsync with the volume actually mounted. We can't access it without the volume mounted. There are actually ways, we have other tools that we can get directly onto the nodes and access the data from there. So it's a much lower level copy. We have some tools for that, which is sort of an escape hatch, but in general, that's how this works. So there are cases where stage pods may or may not actually spawn in the way that we require them to. It's a hard prerequisite. We need to be able to do it. Things like resource quotas or stuff like that may actually prevent those from spawning. Other cases, like maybe there's a node selector that doesn't find a node that matches. So what you're going to see here is like what that actually looks like when it happens. And these exercises are based on real world scenarios that we've seen that we had to work through. So in order to fake a problem with a stage pod, what we're going to do is actually corrupt the image pull spec so that it's bad. So we should see an image pull failure. And so the stage pod will never come up because of that. And this will be in the middle of a migration.
So question, I can't remember because it was a while ago. At what point are we selecting if it's going to be a direct migration or not? That's in the migration plan details?
Yep. So
okay.
We're going to have to go through and write up a migration plan. So that's kind of a good refresher for folks as well. Now that we've got like a stable cluster and replication repository, we've configured everything, we've fixed any problems that we fat fingered into the UI. And so we're ready to go ahead and set up a migration plan.
Okay, so do you want me, for the sake of the exercise, am I doing the preparation
first? Let me take a look. I don't think the order matters. So let's go in and actually corrupt it first. Okay. So there's 2 shell scripts in here. Let's dump the shell script so we can take a look at what it's actually doing.
Sorry.
We want the stage pod. Yeah, the restore script is the fix.
All right. So hang on, I'm waking up over here. Give me a second.
Oh, you're fine.
Michelle, I thought you had a vat of coffee.
I'm working on mine. It's right here, not this one here. It's like, oh, I see it. Sorry. There we go. Okay.
Copy paste. I like that.
Okay. So what this script is going to do is we actually store the image pull spec, the fully qualified string that we use in order to identify the stage pod image. That is parameterized and it's held inside of a config map that the controller reads, I want to say. It's a migration cluster config. So that first command right there is we need to get the good value first. So we're going to extract the current image. We're going to echo it into a file so that it gets persisted to disk. And then we're going to patch in a bad value. So you can see quay.io conveyor invalid image there.
Yes.
Okay. That's going to patch the config map with a bad value. And so the controller is going to try to spawn the stage pod with that bad value, and it's going to fail to come up. And then finally, it's actually going to delete the config map, which actually forces the operator, Chris, as you were talking about, to re-reconcile and create this config map that has a bad value in it. Nice. So that's what this script does.
Can I run it?
Yep.
Can we do it?
Let's do it. Okay, so we deleted the config map. Right now, what I'm expecting is for the operator, the operator's watching for this config map, and it's going to see that it's not present, so it's going to reconcile with this newly updated bad value. So now we can actually go in and create the plan while that actually is reconciling.
refresh my certificates. Hang on a second. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. This just happens.
You might need to re-accept that,
Yeah.
or maybe not.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
everything. Sorry, I just had a little blip on my side, connection wise. Okay, so we're going, our clusters are okay. Our repository was fixed already. We did that. We're going to add a migration plan. Okay.
So feel free to enter anything, test, bad.
How's that?
Yep. So we've got
Okay.
our two clusters. I should mention here too, when you register a cluster, it's not designated a source or a target. So that's actually how people are able to go in like reverse directions. It's because they're able to just create a new plan and swap the source and the target destination, or swap the source and the target
Like,
clusters.
okay.
Yeah. So when you create a plan, that's when they actually get that semantic designation. Let's go ahead and hit next.
All right.
Oh, maybe go back. I think we might have.
Did I do?
Yeah. Source
cluster is. Does anything look? There's not many selection. There's not much to screw up here.
Yeah,
so.
that's interesting. So I'm surprised to see that. This may be another opportunity to debug. Let me take a look.
Okay. So you're saying that this just is, you expected more?
Yeah, so what this screen does is it does a project discovery. So we have another controller that's running that when you create a plan and you say, I want to use this as the source cluster, our controller actually goes and looks at that source cluster and then determines, it does some filtering. It basically says, this is the set of namespaces that are eligible for you to choose as your source. And I'm surprised to see DVM benchmark, because I think that is actually the host cluster, rather than the OpenShift 3 cluster. So something may be off about our configuration.
Okay.
Let's go to the clusters and let's double check that is actually what we think it is. Oh, this is interesting. I gave you the wrong, we registered the 4 cluster as the 3 cluster.
Okay.
So more breaking things on purpose.
Okay, so do you want me to fix it, or do you need to put in like the account tokens?
So in order to fix this, we just need to update these values so that it's actually pointing to the correct cluster. And I think I actually know how that happened. I had logged into the wrong cluster, and I ran the command and gave you the coordinates and the token that had been dropped out of it. So I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to do by accident while you're doing these migrations. So let me give you the actual credentials, or maybe I'll just re-register it so it's correct.
Okay, if you could, do that, because that way I don't have to worry about showing.
Yeah, I've got it right here in front of me.
Yes, folks, this is what you do Saturday mornings when you're doing your big migration of something. This is what happens.
I mean, it happens. People, source, destination, wires crossed, game over. Yeah, it happens. And David, I'm looking for an answer to your question right now. I'm pretty sure it shows all project resources, or like all of them, plus your apps, cluster and apps combined, but I got to double check because it's 3 and I don't remember, to be honest with you.
There it is. Okay. Connected. We're happy.
So now that because I've got this controller verification, I'm pretty confident that we shouldn't see that anymore. We should see the source. Okay. The source apps.
We're good. Add migration plan. Here we go. Selecting my repository. Next. Ta-da.
There we go.
Okay.
There's another fix. That is literally the kind of stuff that we're typically helping people through. And we're not immune to that either. So we've got a few projects to choose from here. Let's choose Nginx example, really what that is. And you can see it's got pods, PV claims. So it's actually using a PV, so it has some data. Okay. And actually, this may show off the feature that I mentioned where folks are actually filling up their volumes to the point where it's past what they have actually requested. I can talk a little bit about that if you think that's useful.
Okay, so Nginx example. It should have 1 PV, right? I thought I saw 1.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that's our PV. This is where we can choose how you migrate the data. I can dive into what these are, or that's going to kind of lead us off onto a little bit of a tangent. We kind of covered it last time, but I can give a quick overview, or we
You
can
want to
just
do a
continue.
quick, like it just
Yeah.
refresh? Okay.
Sure. So copy is literally, I mean, it's a clone of the data. So it's copying the data onto the target. So there's a couple ways that you can do it. There's a file system level, which is going to be like an rsync. There's a snapshot, which is like a provider supported API. So like an AWS snapshot, it'll restore from a snapshot as long as you're going to the same provider. A move is interesting because it's actually like a PV swing. It's gonna drop your it's like an unplug of the volume and then plugging it back into the target. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead with copy. I actually just got a notification that my headset is running low, so I may need to that may drop out, but I can grab some other headphones and I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna do a copy.
I got a light fading over here. It's great. Yeah, everything's going wrong.
Things are going sideways. That's the
point. Okay. We're happy.
So here is where you can designate your target storage class. So we're actually going from an OCS3 to an OCS4, which is on our 4 side.
Okay. And you're happy Faucet's coming out of it, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just poking around.
Yep.
What is this verify? I can't quite see it.
Verify is a checksum verify.
Okay. Okay.
So that's going to take a lot more time, but it will validate the files at a file system layer.
Okay.
So here is Michelle. You're asking, how do I tell it whether to use direct or not? This is where you do that.
Okay.
So actually, can you uncheck that? We're going to do indirect. So we'll use the old style stage pods that this exercise was written for.
Okay, cool. All right, so no direct image migration, no direct PV migration. We're not adding any hooks, correct?
No hooks.
Okay.
Okay, so this warning is telling you that, so we have a feature enabled that actually intelligently detects when your volumes are approaching their capacity, and it will give you it'll request a slight buffer on the target side to try to provide you enough space in order to do it. This is a feature that we've added because we've had a number of failures where people request the same size volume on the target side and they actually run out of space. And so things blow up because the bucket isn't large enough to hold all of their data.
Okay, so, but it's done automatically. What if someone wanted to tweak
done automatically? Yeah.
Would we
say that again?
What if someone wanted to tweak it? What if they were like, oh, well, then don't do it here? Like, do they have any control over how much?
I think there are actually some, there are some like low-level CLI ways in order to do that. I actually have some stories on our roadmap in order to make that more accessible so that you can tweak like the threshold that would trigger it and also the amount of space that it would buffer on the target.
Okay, all right.
Also, by default, this feature's turned off.
Okay, cool. All right, but we're going to see it in action. Okay.
Okay, so at this point, if you run a stage, yep, so we're actually going to do the stage. It's going to attempt to stage the data. And what will happen is it will spawn the stage pod, try and mount the volume. Well, I'm sorry, it will attempt to spawn the stage pod to mount the volume. And of course it will fail because we corrupted that value.
Okay.
If you click on just to the right of bad stage pods, there's a button.
Yeah. Okay.
And then click on stage there.
Oh.
On the left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now it's you can see it's backed up 5 objects. So it's working on the Kubernetes objects first.
Okay.
I'm actually going to take the opportunity to go grab my headphones so I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Is there anything else to click on down here? Okay.
Only one of two. Will this page auto refresh is the question. I'm assuming so.
Any questions, Chris? Anybody got anything?
No questions really, folks. If you have any questions, OpenShift storage related or not, feel free to ask. Or I'm sorry, OpenShift Data Foundations. Is that what it is now?
Yes, ODF.
Okay. Yes, ODF. There was name changes, what, 2 weeks ago? Last
Name
week?
changes are hard.
Yes, naming things are hard in general. Just, yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Here
so
we
it did not
are.
update. Okay. So now it's at the cleanup stage, cleaning up all the stuff that it put out there to make the migration happen.
Okay, so I need to ask him when he comes back, Chris, because I thought we would break here, right? Like,
I wonder if we're going to break here. Nope, it fixed. So
wait, I thought it was supposed to be broken. Hang on.
go to the stage restore details real quick.
Stage restore
Is
details.
that
Hmm.
that's interesting. But it says it finished. Maybe we found a bug. Who knows? It's gonna be great.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we have
Oh,
questions.
that's great. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it might have succeeded when we expected it not to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So here's the overview. So everything looks complete, but if you go in, you can see some parts actually didn't back up, didn't restore.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's take a look if you go up one level.
Okay.
So actually where we expected this to fail, I believe, is stage backup. But so I
Okay.
think I know what might have happened. But we'll take a look. So when we broke that stage specification, it's possible that it actually got recreated with a correct value. I'm not sure how that might have happened, but there are some steps that we can take in order to verify. So we said that the stage actually finished to completion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these values are passed to the controller, a really good like authoritative place in order to get the parameters that are passed to the controller are actually in its environment variables. Those are the variables that it's always going to respect. So that's a good place to verify, to like assert your expectations. So I would expect to see a bad value having been passed to the controller. And it's possible that, so like it would have never been able to spawn a stage pod if that was actually corrupt. So that's a good place to start, is to confirm that those environment variables that pass those values to the controller are actually what we expect them to be.
Okay.
So we can do that by going to the, let's do an OC get CM and see what config maps we've got here. The config maps are the resources that hold these configuration values. So if I remember correctly, it should be it's actually in the cluster config. So if you do a OC get, we want to dump that migration cluster config object to YAML and then grep case insensitive for stage. So
Just stage. Okay.
okay. So that's actually correct. That's interesting. So let's take a look. Let's do the same for the controller's deployment. Actually, let's actually check the pods first to see the controller needs to remount. Like once we change that, the controller pod needs to actually get restarted in order to take those new values. So it's possible that it's actually stale.
Okay.
It actually looks like it did because it was restarted 13 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the age of that pod. So let's just confirm that it has the right value.
Okay.
So we'll do the same thing. We'll dump that pod to YAML and we'll grep case insensitive for stage. I think it'll show up. It may not. Okay. It probably doesn't because we've annotated the pod to mount the config map values as environment variables. So they're not actually on the deployment.
Do you just look at it? Do you want me to grab something else?
We could try it again and watch the pods and see if it actually does spawn the stage pod and is successful. So
Like really try it again? Like corrupt it again?
well, so we did corrupt it and we can confirm that it's successfully corrupted because the config map does have the correct value in it.
Yeah.
Um,
Here. Okay.
I think I missed like the section of the migration. So let me think for a second. What I want to see is I would want to verify that on the source cluster, if we were to do like a watch of the pods while this is running, we should see the stage pods spawn. And then what I would expect is for that to actually error out and fail to launch due to that error image pull. But it seems like what we would actually see is a pod created and then and actually succeed, or something. Some other. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? So this script is run against the source cluster specifically.
Oh, you know what? That actually I think is it.
Because I ran it on the
yeah.
I ran it on the target because that's just for leftover from.
I think you nailed it. Yeah. Okay. It is on the source. So hang on a second. I think we want to repair that on the 4 side.
Okay.
And then go corrupt the 3 side. Okay. So let's
can I
run.
Just edit it directly if you.
I think that you can just run that restore, and what it will do is read the correct value out of the file that it persisted.
Do you want let's look at it first, if you don't mind, just so people can see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can talk through what that does.
Okay.
So yeah, when we ran the initial corruption, it first grabbed the good value and it wrote it to disk in that file. Okay. So here it's reading it back out of that file, and then it's patching that back into the config map.
Okay, so let's restore.
Okay.
And then, do you want to check
can you delete the?
Give it another second. Migration. No, am I looking at the wrong one? I am.
Oh, I know what it is. Can you delete that config map?
Okay.
What it actually is doing is patching the correct value into the operator, which actually is the owner of that config map. So by deleting it, the operator will recreate it with the correct value.
Okay.
That's that reconciliation loop.
What was the name of this? It's this one?
Nope.
Where am I?
It is migration. One second. Let me. Migration cluster config.
That's
yeah.
It. Okay. Okay, we're sure. We're happy.
Yep.
I'm gonna do
yeah.
it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about operators, right? Is like they own all this stuff. So yeah. If you've seen there's some amazing demos that with OpenShift 4, everything's operator managed. So you can really wreak havoc on the cluster, and the operators are just going to continually repair it.
Yep. You could try all you want until you delete the operator. It's going to keep trying.
So it should pop up in a few
Yep.
moments.
Michelle, if you want to log into the OpenShift 3 cluster, let me know if you need, it's going to have credentials in the login. So you probably want to stop sharing, but I can send you the command.
I think I have it.
Okay.
Try it and then, okay. And also there it is. Okay. So just so you know, the environment variable has been fixed. I can see it. You know what? You want to go ahead and send it to me anyway, just so I'm
sure.
100% sure I'm on the right one.
Good call.
Thank you.
So Narindev asked, what database are we migrating? It's not a database. It is data.
This is a toy example with Nginx. So Nginx is storing its logs in a PV. So that's what's persisting. But yeah, this will function with like a MySQL database. And actually, I think like the exercises call for that.
Okay. We're good. Hang on a second. Just sharing. No. Okay. Can you see everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks
good.
Right.
So now
I can see the Nginx example, so you can verify that's OpenShift 3.
And all the rest except for the, okay.
So that's a good example of like, this is, if you recall, I was talking about like a control cluster versus a remote cluster. There's no controller on the 3 cluster. So all you see here is Restic plus Valero.
Okay.
And
so
now
I'm going to run the script here, correct? The same,
yes.
the break it stuff. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So what do you want to, do we rerun this migration plan? Like, do we
That's a good question. I don't know if it will. Let's try that. Let's rerun another stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So staging, the difference between a stage and a migrate is the whole point of stage is that you can rerun it over and over and over again to continue to basically catch up to where your data is at and get it onto the target side. So you really want to get as much of it as possible so that your final cutover is just capturing that final delta.
Can I rerun it?
Yes.
Okay. We go here, correct? Okay.
Yep. Michelle, if you want to go, well, never mind. I was going to tell you to watch the pods in the namespace, but we might not even run the command fast enough to pick it up.
Okay. And there we go.
Beautiful. There we go.
We've broken it successfully.
Yes. So it will perpetually hang here. There are timeouts. So, but in general, like this is what it looks like when your migration stalls. And like I mentioned, there are a litany of reasons why stage pods would not be able to come up. Could be node selectors unable to schedule, could be resource quotas, could be a bad image pull spec like this. I think I actually saw this. I think I saw like it hit the API when I was running through these. It hit the API so many times that it actually got like rate limited, so that we may actually see that as well. That's another thing you may see. Docker's recently like cut down the rate limits. So, but this one's hitting Quay, so I think we should be all right. But at this point now, so if we were to repair it, the controller will actually see that and update the values, and it will pick back up. So.
Okay, so this is the restore. Just to remind people, we're just going to set it back. Okay. And now. We should just see this repair.
Do the instructions tell you to rerun it? I actually can't remember.
I could read the instructions. That always helps. Okay. We did all of this.
Oh, it tells you to cancel it. So if you want to go in and cancel, you can cancel migrations. So that's going to abandon it. And that's always useful because it'll like clean up everything. You can see it actually goes through cleanup helpers and stuff like that. So we canceled that. Now we can go ahead and try another stage.
Okay. Staging started, stage running. Okay.
I think it just passed the step.
Yeah, I was going to say, did we pass?
Just blew through.
Okay.
So this is stuff folks I think last time we had a number of people who were watching who were familiar with CAM, which is the early versions of MTC. Early versions of, CAM didn't have any of this like progress reporting. It didn't have, we've added that stuff to upstream Valero in some cases. I think they actually just recently released some of that. Pranav, an engineer on our team, added that. Nice. But a lot of what you see here has all been like, we've just got such better transparency into what's going on based on these pipelines and everything. Vince Conzola is the UX person who's been helping us with this. So we've come a long way, I think, from CAM, and we're continuing to work on this. So the tool kind of does what we originally set out for it to do, which is migrate workloads from one cluster to another. We can do that faster, which is what direct migration is helping us do. And then the last part of that is, and when you're evacuating an entire cluster full of workloads, it's if anything is wrong, it's probably going to show up. So, and that could be like a bad storage layer. It just doesn't matter. Like, a lot of these clusters are typically may have something wonky about them. So that will often show up. And so we're just trying to really improve this debug experience to help you get to the root problem faster.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just going to ask you. So in this case here, we're in the creating the stage backup here. This says 0 of 0, but this seems to me there's nothing to back up, correct?
I think that's probably an artifact of, I have to look at that.
Okay.
That's probably an artifact of like the toy workload.
Oh, okay.
There may not even be anything in that volume.
Right. That was my thought. I was like,
Yeah.
there's nothing to back up. So, okay. Awesome. Do you want to stage restore? Everything looks right. And there was nothing to actually, okay, that's fine. We're just going through the motions here.
I mean, just Eric, I can talk to the UX team if you want, but like 0% that's not like a good UX in my opinion, right? Like nothing to move would have been better than 0%.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
You say 100% of nothing has been moved.
Right. Like 0 bytes and 0 bytes and it's good. Okay. Well, then just say it's complete or say it's, nothing there, whatever.
Writing that down.
Okay.
Nice.
So, and I just wanted to, for the storage people out there, just to remember, like, you're not going to use, if you're going to do direct and you're going to need staging pods, you cannot do this on a source cluster that's already resource limited and constrained, right? This is not an emergency migration because you're going to have problems putting out staging pods. This is a planned, relaxed, I'm taking my Saturday to do some migrations kind of thing. So, right. It's not a disaster kind of situation.
This is not DR scenario.
It's not DR scenario.
Controlled.
Right.
Like designed to migrate kind of scenario.
I'm just, mentioning it because sometimes people.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point, right? Like, oh my gosh, my cluster's failing. Well, let's just migrate it. No.
No, you can't. No.
Can't migrate bad. Well, I mean, you could. You wouldn't like it.
Okay, so I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I just wanted to touch on what was in number 3. Do we want to touch on anything else that's in the demos, even though, or would
I think that's the main piece. Like, we can just like infinitely go down these like breakage scenarios. We saw some ones that we didn't expect today, but that are just typical. Like that's the kind of stuff that happens. And that's what that process of fixing it looks like. The third one is, I'll quickly just describe it. It's much more in depth than the others. And this is when your GVKs are not compatible between your source and your target cluster. A good example of this is when an API exists on your source cluster and you're using it, but it doesn't exist on your target cluster. So maybe you've got a CRD that's V1 Alpha 1 on your source cluster and it's using V1 on a target cluster. And as OpenShift 4 continues to progress and follow Kubernetes and its versions increment, APIs are getting deprecated. And in fact, we're going to have to deal with one. CRDs, V1 Beta 1 CRDs are going to no longer be supported. So when you're taking objects out and putting them into your target cluster, you're going to have to address that. And this walks through how to deal with that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, nice. Wow.
Eric, you have a KubeCon talk, don't you?
I do. Yeah. We're going to be chatting with a couple folks from the Valero project. So it's a birds of a feather talk. It's going to be kind of a relaxed like Q&A session.
Nice.
Dylan Murray from our team, I think, is going to be, I guess, sort of emceeing that. And so that, it should be fun.
Yeah, Kubernetes birds of a feather are always interesting, right? Like I've moderated a few of them before and it's always fun, right? Especially if you like know nothing about the thing, right? It's very, you learn very quickly. If that makes sense, right? Like, and
actually I've actually never met the folks that are going to be on the panel. So it'll be interesting just to kind of like compare notes about this is the stuff we're seeing. This is the stuff they're seeing. Yeah.
Nice.
That's nice. Okay.
Cool.
So anything else we want to talk about in the last minute?
Well, we got Conveyor up on the screen.
I just dropped the link in chat there.
Yeah, I'll just mention. So Conveyor is the upstream organization, I guess, that you could that we're building MTC, and the project is called Crane Upstream and Conveyor. This is sort of it's an organization where it has an umbrella of projects underneath it. We're running meetups as part of it. So there's Crane, which is like container workloads, but you can see Forklift does virtual machines to KubeVirt. There are other projects that are involved in modernization and monitoring like performance refactoring. So If you're interested in any of this, please go and you can subscribe to the mailing list. There's meetups and invites and other discussions that are happening there. And then separately, we have a Slack channel on the Kubernetes Slack. It's hashtag conveyor. Those are great places to get in touch with us. All of our engineers are hanging out in there. We're helping people with their migrations there directly. So yeah, we'd love for you to subscribe and get involved.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Cool.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for a wonderful episode, Michelle and Eric. And thank you, audience, for tuning in.
Yeah.
Later on the channel today, we're going to be talking to Lars Herman and Katie. I can't say her last name, so I won't try. But we're going to be talking about Red Hat Marketplace. And Red Hat Marketplace is a place where you can go and kind of like just get everything you need off the shelf kind of deal. And it's one simple bill, right? Like you could go grab something from the marketplace and it might not belong to Red Hat, but we've worked with the vendor so that you can plug it into your cluster and off you go. So tune in for that. DevNation, the show's coming up. We've got DevSecOps is the way. We're going to be talking about compliance. And then last but not least today at 3 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC, GitOps Guide to the Galaxy will be exploring CI with Tecton. So please stay tuned to the channel today. There's a lot going on and look forward to seeing y'all there.
Take care.